Hey guys, welcome back. So we're back at the NPP channel, and today we'll be talking about whitewashing in Hollywood.
Our favorite topic.
One of our favorite topics. Yeah.
One of our favorite topics.
Yeah, but we'll talk about Hollywood because that's what we know. It's what most people know, So let's just begin, right? So whitewashing is when a movie that has been written and they have black characters, Asian characters, or Latinos, and the list goes on, and those characters are played by white people, by white actors. I'm sorry, white actors.
Don't apologize.
Okay. And so just to give an example, one of the first ones, but I don't remember if it was one of the first ones, but
one of the earliest
ones. There we go. Thank you. Is The Birth of a Nation, and it was in 1915. And it was the birth of the Ku Klux Klan. I'm sorry. And when they were depicting the black characters, it was just blackface. It was white people being, the savage black man. And then we also have Genghis. Oh my God! I always said Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan.
Call Genghis up and be like, "Why do I keep saying your name this way?"
Genghis Khan again was played by another white actor with Anna the King. The king was the king of Siam, but it was played by a white actor. And
what was that beep?
I don't know.
I don't know. Let's ignore it.
Yeah. And the list goes on. So you would think it's only also The Breakfast at Tiffany's with Rooney was Mr. Yunioshi, who was a Japanese character, right? So you think it's only happening now, but it's not only happening now. You think it's only happening back in the past, but it's happening also now. Well, you have to get to Aloha.
We have Ghost in the Shell that came out recently.
Most recently. Another more recent example is the entire production of Death Note.
Yeah. Doctor Strange as well.
Hunger Games, which was interesting because, like in the books, Katniss is described as someone with olive skin.
Yeah, olive toned skin, which is basically like a cop out
I feel
for
like it's always a
dark skin.
Yeah. But
there's a multitude of shades. We're not just like olive, and olives are green, or really,
I never
really
understood
black.
the olive skin tone, which is why it made it possible for Katniss, for Jennifer Lawrence to play Katniss Everdeen. And what's interesting about that is a lot of people sometimes will say, "Oh, we just don't have enough people of color going out for these roles." But in this case, they specifically looked for a Caucasian woman to play Katniss, which sucked because she's not really white. When I read it, she didn't seem white to me.
Yeah. So, for me, for example, I have a question for you guys. How, when you were young, because we're all from a generation where, when we were younger, we weren't represented properly, or if we were, it was in a very negative light or stereotypical light. So, as an Asian, Latina, and African Black, how did it affect you when you were younger and you weren't represented in a positive light?
I didn't even realize when I was a kid, to be honest. I never questioned why, whenever there was a movie with mostly Latino men, why they were always they were in gangs, why they were always involved in the drug cartel. That's just things that I consumed and never questioned as a child. It was just there, and it's only now that I'm older that I'm becoming more critical of the media that I'm consuming, and just really questioning and thinking to myself, do I actually want to be consuming this type of media? Diane, what about you? Also,
there was Carmen, right, from the L Word.
Yeah, that's true. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. The one time that I've seen a portion of myself represented is Carmen from the L Word, who was a super proud Mexican lesbian. I don't think the actress was actually Mexican, but she was everything to me. Carmen from the L Word was I still can't I can't talk about how amazing this type of representation was. I honestly stopped looking for work for 2 months so I could binge the L Word.
As you do.
I was I know how that story arc ended, but we're not going to talk about that. Carmen and Shane lived happily ever after in my head. But yeah, it's amazing to see, because Carmen was a multitude of identities. She wasn't just a Mexican woman. She wasn't just a lesbian. She was a Mexican lesbian in a happy, committed relationship with her girlfriend, and I was like blown away. R.I.P. The L word. I'm sorry. What about you, Diane?
I definitely didn't notice it either growing up, because I don't see myself represented in media even today. Like, I don't. If I can think of one example that's very recent, is the trailer that came out for Spider-Man: Homecoming. You see Spider-Man has his best friend is like a Filipino guy, and I was just like, oh hey, this is a Filipino actor. This is really great. But then other than that, like, do I see any Filipino women in mainstream media? I don't. And I think growing up, like, whatever I watched was mostly white, and then that was the stuff that I consumed the most. But then at home, I would watch all these Filipino movies that my mom really loved to watch. But like, they were separate in my head. You know, like I never thought I would be able to see myself in media, just because I never thought of it, and I never saw that growing up. And I think we also talked about how it's really important. That's why for the kids now to see representation of you in media, so that kids now can see themselves represented, because we didn't see each other. We didn't see us represented.
Something that's super telling is in all three of our cases, we never questioned why the depictions that we saw were the only ones. We were just kind of, we took it for not for granted, but as the way it is, because as a child you don't really question what you're watching, what you're consuming. That's just something that you're doing. So
like, for me as an African kid, I mean, first of all, I'm not African American, I'm African, yeah. So when I saw movies, I mean, we weren't depicted, but whenever there was a black person, it was depicted, or she was depicted as a loudmouth, very aggressive, and street talker and all those things, So I was like, I would see things, I'm like, oh, what is a person that looks like me? But then the time where I was like super shocked is when I saw an old movie, and then it was black-faced. And I just I think that was the time where I was just like, what is going on?
Yeah. When I learned about yellowface too, because I mean, we have Asians in media, but there's more than one type of Asian, and it's like, if we, like Breakfast at Tiffany's, which we talked about, like, the yellow face. And because even at the time, even if the comedy was racially charged and all that, like, it's whenever you saw your ethnicity in media, it was a stereotype of who, it's not who you are.
You're the butt of the joke. You're not there to be actually like represented.
Yeah, I feel like Asians, if you're a man, you're seen as very effeminate
and sexless
and sexless. And if you're a woman, you're submissive. You're overtly sexual. Yeah, overtly sexual, which is just like. But I think that's also maybe coming from the Asian cultures as well. That's like moving, because like that's how that's how US would see these cultures, and then they try to translate it in American movies, and they're completely like they're stereotypes totally. But I think.
I think people are not making an effort. I think it's easier to write something that's very easy, very fast, very silly, because that's then seeing a character as a monolith, and I don't think it's probably.
And that's why tropes are tropes. Like
there you go.
Like the people, these white men most of the time will create these stories, but they're doing what they're used to, and they're doing what decades and decades of what the racist film industry has always done. So it's not it's hard for them to like take a chance on something and see if it'll work out.
But I do believe what's also very violent, or very, well, I say violent, but that's what it is especially when you take historical figures, and those historical figures are played by white actors, right? So we just have to look at
Rumi.
Rumi.
The casting rumors for Rumi, which is an Iranian, a Persian poet. The casting rumors so far have been that it's going to be Leonardo DiCaprio playing Rumi, which last time I checked, he's not Iranian. He's like a white American man. And the violence behind, casting historical figures as white is that you're telling us that white actors can portray people of color better than actual people of color, which is obviously not true.
But it also sends it's also, just to add on, it's also for young children, for other people looking at the media, it sends this image of maybe we're not as good at it, especially for the kids. Maybe we're not as good, so might as well let a European or a white person portray that that part.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I just really hope that the Rumi thing doesn't happen.
I'm crossing my fingers that Rumi doesn't happen, because but it's not just the thing that if it does happen, if it doesn't happen, it's just the fact that they thought about it that kind of disturbs me, because like right now we're talking about an historical person that actually existed.
Yeah, it's not historical fantasy. Like, you're trying to do like a biopic, and the fact that it crossed your mind to like just recast and put a white person as Rumi is just so disgusting, because again, like you mentioned earlier, it's this idea that white actors can do people of color better than actual people of color can.
Speaking of that, but a good thing that happened, I think it happened last year. Do you remember they were going to put up this episode? I can't remember what show it was, but it was going to be an episode on Michael Jackson. Do you remember that? And then they cast this
Ralph Fiennes.
So they cast him, and then they filmed the whole thing. But because of the complete backlash, because like how the F can you like?
Michael Jackson was not
a white man.
Michael Jackson was a black man, and what the fuck, man? What the fuck?
I just feel...
Sorry, I was cursing.
We can cut that.
My apologies.
But because of the backlash, it didn't end up airing.
If there are toddlers in the room, please escort them out.
But maybe it's just the fact that people are thinking about it. So even if you did it, and then you saw there was no backlash, they were still going to put it.
Yeah.
They were still going to put it. And that's why I'm very disturbed about all of this, because there's something violent about all of this in a way. I'm sorry, I was talking to her. Yeah, so in a way that is just you're taking historical, like, people that actually exist, and you're whitewashing it. It hasn't really changed.
Nope,
it
not
hasn't
at all.
really changed. It's just now it's more. I don't know if it's implicit. No, it's not implicit.
Because people are still taking on these roles. Directors, producers, casting people, they're always. I think they're just thinking they're looking for bankable actors.
Bankable actors. But I think we just have to be careful, because they're looking for bankable actors, but they also want a person that looks like them. So the excuse of looking for a bankable actor, I don't take it anymore. I'm very because I don't know, there's many bankable actors.
Yeah, it's because at that point what the idea is in Hollywood is that the only thing that sells is whiteness, because whiteness is the default. If we variate from this formula that we've seen work time and time again, we're going to be losing money. And at the end of the day, Hollywood is a money-making machine, right?
But they're losing money.
But yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I don't understand, is like there's like this dissonance where they're not realizing that all these fucking major whitewashed movies are tanking. They're losing a lot of money, and you see, and there are other movies that are making with the leads being people of color that are making a lot of money.
Fast and
the Furious is one of the top, like the biggest grossing franchises right now, and you have a beautifully diverse cast. Like, I am a fucking ride or die, man. Ride or die. I love Fast and the Furious.
The greatest.
I don't know. I haven't watched it.
We'll talk about this.
We'll talk about this.
We'll try to convert Raphael in another video.
But also, I think, like, if you think about Stonewall, that tanked, severely tanked. And the director, he was talking about how, like,
for people who might not be aware, Stonewall is the Stonewall events of 1968 are credited to be the beginning of like the queer, and that time we would use the word gay, like the gay civil rights movement in the United States. So what had happened is that there was a riot at a bar that was the go-to place for a lot of like queer people of color and a lot of trans people of color. So there was a riot that happened, and the instigators of that riot, who got the ball moving and who got the brunt force of like the backlash, were trans women of color. So there was a movie that was filmed here in Montreal about those events.
Was it in Montreal?
Yeah, it was filmed in Montreal. It was filmed in Montreal.
Oh, shit.
But what had happened is that in the filming of this movie, the protagonist was this white gay guy named Danny. Danny is a fictional character. He was not at the Stonewall riots. So in recasting this story through the perspective of a white gay man, the director and the producers of this movie alienated they alienated the people who were going to be watching this movie, which are queer people, because that's not our history. Our history is not Danny who threw the first brick. It was a trans woman of color who threw the first brick.
And also, I think they cast Marsha P. Johnson as a cis
man playing Marsha P. Johnson, she's like the fucking... She is the mother of the queer rights movement.
And I think the director said something along the lines of, well, you know, it's not just for gay people that I wanted to make this movie, because he's gay himself, and he wanted to make this for straight people as well, so that they could watch this and understand the movement. So he thought, you know, like, Danny is a very, like, straight acting character, so he could speak to the gays and the straights. But this is an inaccurate depiction. It's an inaccurate, like, story. Like, you're not telling the real story. And look how bad it tanked. It
tanked horribly, because queer people aren't going to go see it because that's not the truth, and straight people unfortunately aren't going to go see it because they're just not interested in queer history, which is really, really sad, because it's fascinating.
That's fascinating.
Solutions. Do we have any solutions? Like, what do you think?
Go to Kickstarter. Go to Indiegogo. Go to GoFundMe. Look for projects that are being, you know, backed by people of color, by queer people, by trans people, that are being created by people who you would like to see, and give them the money that they deserve. Because it might not be the best option. Is, I mean, obviously, if you're struggling, if you don't have that much money, you're not going to be able to do it, which is fine, understandable. If you have the money, go support these amazing projects that are out there that need the support, because they're giving us the representation that we so desperately need, and we're not going to see it from Hollywood. It's not going to be.
It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen within 50 years from now. Like,
it's not going to happen overnight. And I feel like for me personally, this is also one of the reasons why I am on this channel, because there just needs to be more voices like mine out there, because I myself am not an anomaly. I am what's the name of the demon? I am Legion.
Legion?
The demon. I don't know, biblical stuff, I guess. I don't know. Maybe a horror movie. Anyways, I am. There are people just like me out there who think they're alone, but you're not. There's people out there just like you. You just need to find your community. That's a different topic. I'm sorry.
Yes, but it's okay. I mean, like, for me, for example, like, I don't. We were talking about Hollywood, but we also have to talk about here in Quebec with a show called Les Bye-Bye, Les Bye-Bye. And they totally black-faced.
So Le Bye-Bye, Le Bye-Bye, The Bye-Byes is a show that happens here in Quebec at the end of the year. So it's basically like a comedic recap of everything that's happened in the province over the past year. But it's a bunch of like white Quebec people saying jokes and stuff. And they have a history of using blackface.
And that's what I'm like saying. Like, so look at Hollywood, look over here. Also, I think it's important for people to also, like we said at the beginning, not beginning, but like right now, don't wait for Hollywood. Don't wait for the Quebec industry or the French industry to change their ways. I think it's important that we also, whether Black, Asians, Latino, that we also find our artists, and we write our story, and we do it ourselves. I'm not saying it's an easy task. I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. I mean, Hollywood is a very strong industry, right? But I think it's also important that people we can show that we can do our own things too.
Yeah, I
find our writers, find our writers, find actors, find producers, find cameramen that are Black or Latino or Asian, and just
rally behind them, give them, tweet about them, post about them, write about them, be more familiar with their body of work, because that's how, put your money behind them, basically, because that gives them the opportunity to make the content that you want to see.
Again, I agree that you shouldn't rely completely on Hollywood, because whenever there's always going to be a new movie that comes out that, like the trailer for Death Note that came out, tragic, very tragic. But I mean, it was this, when I saw that, it was this feeling of I'm super disappointed, but I'm also super not surprised. But instead of just feeling that way all the time, and talking about it is really great. Yeah. To discuss it is really important, because that way we educate more people on what whitewashing is, and how you can have better stories told through the media. But you should also think about how, I think not a lot of people think how can I make it how can I make the world a better place? But it's, of course, you always get to that point, and it's by supporting artists, supporting creators that represent the stories that you want to be that you want told through the big screen, even though it's not going to happen. You're not going to see Hollywood completely change overnight, and I think every Oscars award show is always going to be now
hashtag Oscars.
But I think it's getting more traction and people are listening. But it's a super, super slow movement, and it's not going to be done unless, if you're a creator yourself, you want to collaborate, find, again, other actors, find producers, find writers, all these people, and have a community and do that. Yeah,
so tell us what you guys think after listening to our conversation.
Comment down below.
There you go, and subscribe.
Please.
Please subscribe so we can do this more often, and we can diversify.
Our goal right now is just to hit that 100 subscribers. So
please just
we want a custom URL so badly for this channel. It makes it so much easier for people to find us. So please, if you're watching our video, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your teachers,
and tell us your thoughts.
Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, the NPP channel, right?
The NPP channel.
Yeah.
That's it,
guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.